Hello. Welcome to Silent Frontier Stories. Tonight's story begins in the middle of a freezing snowstorm, where a tiny girl stood trembling in the wind. Clutching her baby sister as if letting go would mean losing everything. And perhaps, somewhere in this story, you'll discover how a single moment of kindness can change a life forever.
Jesse Thornton dropped to his knees in the snow when he saw it. A child. A tiny girl, no more than 4 years old, standing barefoot in a blizzard, holding a bundle against her chest. Her lips were blue, her eyes were wild, and she was shaking so hard she could barely stand. But she wouldn't move. She wouldn't let go. Because inside that bundle was a baby, her baby sister. And when that little girl looked up at Jesse with those desperate eyes and whispered, "Please, mister, my sister won't wake up," something inside him shattered and never went back together. If you want to see how this story ends, subscribe to our channel and watch until the very last moment. Comment below with the city you're watching from. I want to know how far this story travels. The winter of 1887 had already killed 3 men in Elkhorn Creek before December was half done. Jesse Thornton knew that because he'd helped dig 2 of the graves himself. The frozen ground fought back against every shovel strike, and Jesse's hands bled through his gloves by the time they finished. He didn't complain, didn't say much of anything. He just dug until it was done, then rode home alone to a ranch house that hadn't heard laughter in 6 years. He was 43 years old, felt like 60. Easy, boy. Jesse patted his horse's neck as they pushed through the snow toward the north fence line. Wind was picking up something fierce, driving ice crystals into his face like tiny needles. "Storm's coming in fast. Let's check the cattle and get back." Buck snorted, his breath coming out in thick, white clouds. The old horse knew winter, knew that when the sky turned that particular shade of gray, you had maybe an hour before the world turned white and deadly. Jesse pulled his collar up and squinted through the swirling snow. His cattle were huddled together near the tree line, doing what cattle do in a blizzard, surviving. He counted heads, all there. Good. He was turning Buck toward home when he heard it. At first, he thought it was the wind. The Wyoming wind could make sounds that'd fool a man. Sounds like voices. Sounds like crying. Sounds like his daughter Eliza calling for him in the dark. "Papa, Papa, where are you?" Jesse closed his eyes. Not real, never real. Just the wind and the memories and the whiskey he hadn't drunk enough of yet. But the sound came again, thin, weak, human. Jesse's whole body went rigid. He pulled Buck to a stop and listened. The wind howled, the snow swirled, and underneath it all, barely there, barely alive, a child crying. Whoa. Jesse dismounted fast, his boots sinking into snow up to his shins. He scanned the white emptiness around him. Nothing. Just snow and more snow and the dark shapes of trees bent under the weight of ice. The crying came again, closer now, coming from the old wagon trail that ran along the creek. Jesse ran. His heart was hammering before his mind caught up with what was happening. He hadn't run like this in years, hadn't had a reason to. But something in that sound, something desperate and dying, pulled him forward like a rope around his chest. He found the wagon first, or what was left of it. An old freight wagon, one wheel snapped clean off, tilted sideways in a drift. The canvas top was torn and flapping in the wind. No horses, no driver, abandoned. Then he saw her, a girl, tiny, 4 years old, maybe less, standing in the snow next to the broken wagon in nothing but a thin cotton dress and a shawl that wouldn't keep a dog warm. Her feet were bare, her lips were blue, her whole body was shaking so violently that she could barely stay upright.
But she was standing, still standing, because in her arms, pressed tight against her chest, wrapped in what looked like a piece of torn blanket, was a baby. Oh, dear God. Jesse fell to his knees in front of her. The snow soaked through his pants, but he didn't feel it. All he could see was that little girl's face. Those eyes, big and blue and terrified and fierce all at the same time. She took a step back when he reached for her, pulled the baby closer. Her arms tightened around that bundle like she'd die before she let go. Hey now, Jesse held up his hands. I ain't gonna hurt you, I promise. The girl didn't speak. She just stared at him with those wild eyes, her teeth chattering so hard he could hear them. My name's Jesse. I've got a ranch just up the way. I can help you. Can you tell me your name? Nothing. Just the shaking. Just the wind. Just those eyes. Jesse looked at the baby in her arms. The bundle wasn't moving. Wasn't making any sound at all. His stomach dropped. Sweetheart, can I see the baby? Is the baby okay? The girl's face crumbled. Her lower lip trembled, and when she spoke, her voice was so small and so broken that Jesse had to lean forward to hear it. My sister won't wake up. 3 words. 3 words that reached inside Jesse Thornton's chest and grabbed hold of something he'd thought was dead. Please, mister. The girl's legs gave out. She sank into the snow, still clutching the baby, still holding on. My sister won't wake up. I tried to keep her warm. I tried. Jesse moved. He didn't think, didn't plan. 6 years of numbness burned away in a single second, and he moved like a man possessed. He shrugged off his heavy coat and wrapped it around both of them, the girl and the baby together. Then he lifted them, both of them. The girl weighed almost nothing. Bones and cold skin, and a heartbeat he could feel fluttering against his chest like a trapped bird. I got you, his voice cracked. I got you both. You're safe now. The girl looked up at him. For a moment, just a moment, the fear left her eyes. And what replaced it was something that broke Jesse clean in half. Trust. You won't leave us? She whispered. Jesse's throat closed up. He was back in that empty house 6 years ago, standing in the doorway of Eliza's room, staring at her empty bed, her rag doll still on the pillow. He'd been 200 miles away when the diphtheria took her. 200 miles away when his little girl called for her papa, and he wasn't there. I ain't going nowhere, he said. Not ever. He put them on Buck. The girl first, then the baby in her lap, then Jesse behind them both, his arms on either side like a cage of warmth. The girl leaned back against his chest, and he felt her whole body relax for the first time. Like she'd been holding herself together by sheer will, and now that someone else was holding her, she could finally stop. Hold on tight, little one. The ride back to the ranch was the longest mile of Jesse's life. The storm was getting worse. Visibility dropped to nothing. The wind screamed like a living thing, tearing at his hat, his shirt, trying to rip the children from his arms. Jesse bent his body over them, shielding them with everything he had. His back took the full force of the wind. Ice formed on his eyebrows, his beard. His fingers went numb on the reins. But he kept riding, kept holding on. Stay with me, sweetheart. Both of you. Just stay with me. The girl's hand found his arm and gripped it. Her tiny fingers were like ice, but her grip was iron. That's my girl. You keep fighting. Buck found the ranch by instinct more than sight. The old horse pushed through the last drift and stopped at the porch steps like he'd done it 1,000 times. Jesse dismounted with the children and kicked open the front door. Inside was dark and cold. The fire had gone out hours ago. Jesse laid the children on his bed, the only bed, and went to work. His hands shook as he built the fire back up. Shook as he heated water. shook as he pulled back the blanket from the baby's face. The baby was a girl, newborn, maybe 2, 3 weeks old. Her skin was gray-white.
Her lips were colorless. Her eyes were closed, and she wasn't moving. "No." Jesse's voice was a whisper. "No, no, no." He pressed his fingers to the baby's neck, waited, prayed for the first time in 6 years. There. Faint, weak, but there. A heartbeat. "She's alive." Jesse almost laughed. "She's alive, sweetheart. Your sister's alive." The 4-year-old was sitting up in the bed, watching him with those enormous eyes. She hadn't made a sound since they got inside. Just watched. Waited. Like she was used to watching and waiting for bad things to happen. "We need to warm her up." Jesse stripped the wet blanket off the baby and pressed her tiny body against his bare chest, inside his shirt. The cold of her skin against his was shocking, like holding a piece of ice shaped like a child. He grabbed every blanket in the house and piled them on the bed. Then he sat down, the baby against his chest, and pulled the 4-year-old close with his other arm. "Come here, get under the blankets. You need to warm up too." The girl hesitated. Then she crawled under the blankets and pressed herself against Jesse's side. Her body was rigid at first, stiff with cold and fear and something else. Something Jesse recognized. She was waiting for him to push her away. "I got you," Jesse said again, softer this time. "Both of you. I got you and I ain't letting go." Minutes passed. The fire crackled and grew. Warmth slowly crept back into the cabin. And under all those blankets, pressed against Jesse's body heat, the baby stirred. A tiny sound, not quite a cry, more like a kitten mewing. Weak, but alive. The 4-year-old's head shot up. She stared at the bundle on Jesse's chest. "She's waking up?" The girl's voice trembled. "She's really waking up?" "She's waking up." The girl reached out one small hand and touched the baby's cheek. Her fingers were still cold, still trembling, but the gentleness in that touch made Jesse's eyes burn. "I told you," the girl whispered to her sister. "I told you someone would come. I told you to hold on." Jesse had to look away, had to breathe, had to swallow down the thing in his throat that was trying to come out as a sound he hadn't made in 6 years. "You kept her alive," Jesse said. "Out there in the snow, in that storm. You kept your sister alive. How long were you out there?" The girl thought about it. "Since last night. The man put us out of the wagon. He said we were too much trouble." Jesse went still. "What man?" "The man Grandpa sent." The girl's voice was flat, matter-of-fact, like she was reporting the weather. "He was supposed to take us far away, but the wagon broke and the horses ran and he got mad. He said bad words and then he left." "He just left you there? In the storm?" "He said someone would find us." The girl paused. "I don't think he meant someone nice." Jesse's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. Someone had done this on purpose. Someone had taken 2 children, a 4-year-old and a newborn, and left them to die in a Wyoming blizzard. The girl was watching his face, reading his reaction with the sharp instinct of a child who'd learned to read adults for survival. "Are you angry?" she asked. "Not at you. Never at you." Jesse forced his voice steady. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Ruthie." "Ruthie. That's a pretty name. And your sister? Does she have a name?" "Mama called her Baby. She didn't get to give her a real name." The girl's face went tight. "Grandpa said Mama was sick. But Mama wasn't sick. Mama was crying.
Mama screamed when they took us away." Jesse felt something shift inside him, something cold and sharp and dangerous. "Who's your grandpa, Ruthie?" The girl went quiet. Her eyes changed. The trust flickered, replaced by something darker. "He said never to tell. He said if I told, bad things would happen to Mama." "Nobody's going to hurt your mama. I promise." Ruthie studied his face for a long time. Then she leaned close and whispered, like the walls might hear. "Prescott. His name is Prescott." The blood drained from Jesse's face. Marshall Wade Prescott was the most powerful man in 3 counties. He owned the bank, the biggest ranch, the general store, and half the men who called themselves law in Elkhorn Creek. When Prescott wanted something done, it got done. When Prescott wanted something gone, it disappeared. Jesse had lived under Prescott's shadow for 6 years, watched him squeeze ranchers off their land, watched him run honest men out of town, watched him smile at Sunday services while people whispered about the things he did behind closed doors. And now Jesse was holding Prescott's granddaughter. Both of them. "You know him," Ruthie said. It wasn't a question. "I know him. Are you scared of him?" Jesse looked down at the baby on his chest. She'd fallen asleep, her tiny hand curled around his finger. Her breathing was slow but steady. Color was coming back to her cheeks. Then he looked at Ruthie, 4 years old, barefoot in a blizzard, holding her baby sister while a man walked away and left them to die. "No," Jesse said. "I ain't scared of him." Ruthie's eyes widened slightly, like no one had ever said that before. A knock on the door made them both jump. Jesse's hand went to the rifle above the fireplace. He eased Ruthie off his lap and set the baby gently on the bed, surrounded by blankets. "Stay here. Don't make a sound." Ruthie nodded. She pulled the baby close and curled around her, shielding her with her own small body. The gesture hit Jesse like a fist to the gut. He grabbed the rifle and crossed to the door, opened it just wide enough to see. A woman stood on his porch, half buried in snow. Her coat was crusted with ice. Her face was red from the wind, and she was breathing hard, like she'd been walking through the storm for a long time. "Mr. Thornton." Clara Whitfield's voice was steady despite the cold. "Dr. Cole sent me. He said you might need help tonight. Something about children found on the wagon trail." Jesse stared at her. "How does Doc Cole know about that?" Clara pushed a strand of frozen hair from her face. "The whole town's talking. Frank Harlan saw you riding in with something in your arms. Word travels fast in Elkhorn Creek." Jesse didn't move from the doorway. "Miss Whitfield, I appreciate you coming, but this ain't a good time." "Mr. Thornton, I'm a teacher. I've cared for more children than you've branded cattle. And Dr. Cole said one of them might be a newborn." She met his eyes. "Do you know how to care for a newborn in this weather? Do you know how often she needs to feed? How to keep her temperature stable? What to watch for if she goes into shock?" Jesse said nothing. "That's what I thought." Clara stepped forward. "Now let me in before we both freeze to death." Jesse hesitated. Then he stepped aside. Clara came in and stopped cold when she saw the bed. Ruthie was curled around the baby, her eyes huge and frightened, staring at this new stranger. "Oh, my Lord!" Clara pressed her hand to her mouth. She's just a baby herself." She walked to the bed slowly, the way you'd approach a wounded animal. She knelt down so she was eye level with Ruthie. "Hello, sweetheart. My name is Clara. I'm a teacher. I'm here to help you and your sister. Is that all right?" Ruthie looked at Jesse. Jesse nodded. "She's okay, Ruthie. She's a friend." Ruthie studied Clara's face for a long moment. Then she said something that made Clara's breath catch. "You've been crying. Your eyes are red. Are you sad too?" Clara blinked. For just a second, something raw crossed her face. Then she smiled. "Sometimes, but right now I'm just cold and worried about you. Can I look at your sister?" Ruthie hesitated. Then she slowly unwrapped her arms from around the baby. Clara reached down and lifted the newborn with practiced hands, checking her breathing, her color, her temperature. How long was she exposed? Clara's voice had changed, professional now, focused. "Hours," Jessie said. "Found them by the old wagon trail." The older one was standing in the snow, holding her, barefoot. Clara's hands stilled on the baby. She looked at Ruthie, looked at her bare feet, her thin dress, the bruises on her arms that Jessie hadn't noticed until now. Standing in the snow, Clara repeated quietly, "Holding her sister, barefoot." "She didn't let go," Jessie said. "Not once. Not even when I tried to take the baby. She wouldn't let go until she was sure I wasn't going to hurt them." Clara was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned back to the baby, and Jessie saw her wipe her eyes quickly, thinking he wouldn't notice. "The baby needs milk," Clara said. "Warm. Do you have any?" "Cow's milk in the cold cellar. It'll have to do." "Warm it, not hot. Test it on your wrist first. And I need clean cloth for wrapping. Something soft." Jessie moved to the kitchen. Behind him, he heard Clara talking to Ruthie in a low, gentle voice. "You're very brave, Ruthie. You saved your sister's life. Do you know that? Mama said to take care of her." Ruthie's voice was small. "Mama said I'm the big sister, and big sisters protect." "Your mama's right." Clara's voice cracked just slightly. "Your mama raised a very brave girl." Jessie heated the milk, tested it on his wrist, like Clara said, and brought it back. Clara had fashioned a feeding cloth from a piece of clean cotton, dipping the corner into the warm milk and letting the baby suck. The baby drank, slowly at first, then with growing hunger. Her tiny mouth worked at the cloth, her small hands opening and closing. "There you go," Clara whispered. "That's it. You're hungry, aren't you? You're going to be just fine." Ruthie watched every move Clara made. When Clara looked up, the little girl's eyes were fixed on her with an intensity that was startling in a child so young. "You're good at this," Ruthie said. Clara smiled, but her eyes were wet. "I've had practice." "Do you have babies?" The question hung in the air. Jessie saw Clara flinch like she'd been slapped, but she recovered fast. "No, sweetheart, I don't have babies, but I take care of other people's children. That's my job." Ruthie considered this. "That's sad. Everyone should have babies." Clara didn't respond. She just kept feeding the newborn, her face turned away so Ruthie couldn't see whatever was on it. Jessie stood by the fire, watching them. The teacher with the baby, the 4-year-old with the old eyes. His dead house, suddenly full of life and warmth and something that hurt worse than the cold. Because it felt like home. And Jessie Thornton knew better than anyone how fast a home could be taken away. "She needs a name," Ruthie said suddenly. "My sister." "She needs a real name. Mama never got to give her one." Clara looked at Jessie. Jessie looked at Ruthie. "What do you want to call her?" Jessie asked. "I don't know any good names." Ruthie frowned. "What was your little girl's name? The one in the picture by the bed." Jessie felt the floor shift under his feet. He hadn't talked about Eliza, hadn't mentioned her. But there was a daguerreotype on the bedside table. Eliza at 3, sitting on Mary's lap, both of them smiling. A 4-year-old had noticed what grown men walked past every day without seeing. Her name was Eliza, Jesse said. His voice sounded far away, even to himself. Ruthie nodded seriously. That's a pretty name. Can we call my sister Eliza? So your little girl's name isn't Lonely anymore? The cabin went silent except for the crackling fire. Clara stopped feeding the baby. Her hand came up to cover her mouth. Jesse tried to speak and couldn't. Tried again. Yeah, he finally managed. His voice broke on the word.
Yeah, I think Eliza would like that.
Ruthie smiled. It was the first time she'd smiled since he found her. Small, fragile, like a candle flame in a hurricane. But real. Eliza, Ruthie whispered to the baby. Your name is Eliza now. Papa Jesse's little girl is sharing her name with you. So you'll never be alone. Jesse turned toward the fire so they wouldn't see his face. He gripped the mantle with both hands and breathed through his teeth and let the grief hit him like a wave. Not the old grief, the dark and rotting kind that had lived in his chest for 6 years. This was different. This was clean. This was the grief of a wound finally being washed out so it could heal. Clara was beside him before he knew she'd moved. She didn't touch him, didn't speak, just stood close enough that he could feel her warmth. I'm all right, Jesse said. I know you are, Clara said quietly. But you don't have to be. Not right now. They stood there while the fire burned and the storm raged outside, and Ruthie sang a lullaby to baby Eliza in a voice so small and sweet it barely existed. Miss Whitfield, Jesse's voice was rough. I need to tell you something about these children, about who they are and where they came from. Clara looked at him. Whatever it is, it can wait until morning. Right now, those girls need warmth, food, and sleep. Everything else comes after. It can't wait. Jesse turned to face her. These children belong to Wade Prescott's family, his granddaughters, and someone left them to die on purpose. Clara's face went white. She looked at Ruthie, at baby Eliza, then back at Jesse. Prescott, she whispered. His daughter Adelaide had the babies in secret. Prescott paid a man to get rid of them, make them disappear. That man left them in a broken wagon in the middle of a blizzard and walked away. Clara was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was different, harder, colder than the storm outside. Then we don't tell anyone they're here, not tonight, not until we figure out what to do. If Prescott finds out I have them, he'll come for them. He'll come with men and guns and legal papers, and he won't stop until those girls are gone. Clara looked at the bed where Ruthie had fallen asleep, curled around baby Eliza. Both of them breathing softly, peacefully, like the world outside couldn't touch them. Then he'll have to go through me first, Clara said. Jesse studied her face. The fear was there. He could see it. But underneath the fear was something else. Something that looked like the same fire he felt burning in his own chest. You don't know what you're signing up for, Miss Whitfield. Clara met his eyes. I spent 3 years watching good people look the other way while Wade Prescott destroyed lives. I watched him take land, ruin families, and break anyone who stood against him. And I said nothing because I was scared. She straightened her shoulders. I'm done being scared. Those girls need us. Both of us. Before Jesse could respond, Ruthie stirred in her sleep. Her small hand reached out, searching. Finding nothing, she whimpered. Papa, Papa, don't go. Jesse crossed the room in 3 steps. He sat on the edge of the bed and took Ruthie's hand. Her fingers wrapped around his immediately, even in sleep. Tight, desperate, like she'd been reaching for someone her whole short life and finally found them. I'm here, little one. Jesse's voice was barely a whisper. Papa's here.
The word should have burned, should have cut him open. Papa. He hadn't been anyone's papa in 6 years, hadn't earned it, hadn't wanted it. The last child who called him that was buried in a grave he dug with his own hands. But Ruthie's fingers held on, and baby Eliza breathed soft and steady on the pillow. And Clara stood by the fire, watching him with those warm brown eyes that saw too much and judged too little. And Jesse Thornton, the man who'd spent 6 years running from his own heart, made a decision. He looked at Clara. Whatever comes tomorrow, whatever Prescott does, I ain't giving these girls up. Not to him, not to anyone. Clara nodded slowly. Then we fight. Outside, the blizzard screamed against the walls. The temperature dropped to 20 below. And somewhere in town, in a house so big it swallowed the darkness, Marshal Wade Prescott was reading a message from the man he'd paid to make his problem disappear. The message was short. 3 words. It's done. But it wasn't done. It wasn't even close. Because 2 children were alive in a cowboy's cabin. A woman with nothing left to lose had chosen to stand. And a man who thought his heart was dead had just discovered it was only sleeping. The storm raged on, and inside that small ranch house, a family that had no right to exist began to take its first breath. Ruthie woke up screaming before dawn. Jesse was out of his chair and across the room before the sound even registered his words. The rifle clattered to the floor behind him. He grabbed Ruthie and pulled her against his chest, and she fought him for 3 terrible seconds before she realized where she was. Papa. She buried her face in his shirt, her whole body shaking. He came back. The man came back and took Eliza. He took her away. Nobody took her. Jesse held her tight. Look. Look right there. Eliza's right beside you. See? She's sleeping. She's safe. Ruthie turned her head and saw the baby next to her on the bed, still wrapped in blankets, breathing slow and easy. She reached out and touched her sister's cheek with one trembling finger. She's warm, Ruthie whispered. She's really warm. She's warm because you kept her warm. You did that, Ruthie. You saved her. Ruthie was quiet for a long moment. Then she pressed closer to Jesse and said something so soft he almost missed it. Mama used to hold me like this. Before Grandpa got mad. Before everything went bad. Jesse's arms tightened around her. He wanted to ask what she meant. Wanted to know every detail of what Wade Prescott had done to this child's family. But 4-year-olds don't tell their stories in straight lines. They tell them in pieces, in fragments, in the quiet moments when they feel safe enough to let the words out. So Jesse didn't ask. He just held her. Clara appeared in the doorway, her hair loose around her shoulders, her eyes swollen from a sleep that clearly hadn't lasted long. She took one look at them, and something crossed her face that she quickly tucked away. Nightmare? She asked quietly. Jesse nodded. Clara crossed to the bed and checked on Eliza. The baby stirred, made a soft mewing sound, then settled. Clara's hand lingered on the baby's forehead, testing for fever. She's doing well. Temperature is stable. She fed twice during the night. She's stronger than she looks. She's a fighter, Jesse said, like her sister. Ruthie lifted her head from Jesse's chest. Miss Clara? Yes, sweetheart? Are you staying? Clara looked at Jesse. Jesse looked at Ruthie. The question was simple, but nothing about the answer was. I'm staying, Clara said, for as long as you need me. Ruthie nodded like this was the correct answer, the only answer, and laid her head back down. The morning passed in a rhythm that felt strangely natural. Clara heated milk for Eliza and fed her with the cloth while Jessie made breakfast. Ruthie sat at the kitchen table, eating biscuits with a concentration that told Jessie she hadn't eaten properly in days, maybe longer. "When's the last time you had a real meal?" Jessie asked, trying to keep his voice casual. Ruthie chewed thoughtfully. "The man gave me bread yesterday. Before that, Mama snuck me food when Grandpa wasn't looking." Jessie's hand tightened on the coffee cup. Ruthie kept talking, the way children do when they finally have an audience. "Grandpa said Mama was bad. He said she brought shame. I don't know what shame means, but it made Grandpa real angry. He yelled at Mama all the time. Sometimes he hit her." Jessie set down his cup. Clara had stopped feeding Eliza. The cabin was very quiet. "Did he ever hit you?" Jessie asked. Ruthie's eyes dropped to her plate. "Once, when I tried to stop him hitting Mama. He pushed me and I fell into the table and cut my arm." She pulled up her sleeve and showed them a thin scar along her forearm. "Mama cried all night after that. She said she was sorry. She said she'd find a way to get us out." Clara made a sound. Not quite a gasp, not quite a word. Something between fury and heartbreak. "But then Baby came," Ruthie continued, "and Grandpa got even madder. He said Baby was an abomination. I don't know that word either, but Mama screamed when he said it. And then the man came, and Grandpa told Mama we died. Both of us. He told Mama her babies were dead." "How do you know that?" Clara's voice was barely controlled. "I heard him." Ruthie looked up, and her eyes were old, so old. "I was hiding under the bed when Grandpa told Mama. I heard Mama fall on the floor. I heard her screaming. Then the man came and took us out the back door, and Mama didn't even know." Jessie stood up. He walked to the window and stared out at the white emptiness. His hands were shaking. Not from cold, from something much worse. Behind him, Clara was holding Ruthie. The little girl had finally started crying. Quiet tears, no sobbing, no wailing. Just tears running down her face while she sat perfectly still, like she'd learned a long time ago that loud crying only made things worse. Jessie turned back. His face was set. His eyes were dry. "Clara, we need to talk." She looked up at him. She knew what he was going to say. "Not here." Jessie glanced at Ruthie. "Outside." They left Ruthie watching over Eliza with strict instructions not to open the door for anyone. The storm had passed during the night, leaving behind a world of blinding white. The cold was brutal, the kind that froze your breath before it left your mouth. "We can't keep this quiet," Jessie said. "Not for long. Harlan saw me ride in with them. The whole town's probably talking by now. And when Prescott hears that 2 children showed up at my ranch the same night his man was supposed to make them disappear, he's going to put it together fast." "I know." Clara crossed her arms against the cold. "What do? We need proof of what Prescott did. Right now, all we have is a 4-year-old's word against the most powerful man in Wyoming. No court is going to take that seriously. There's Adelaide. If we could get to her, if she knew her daughters were alive." "Prescott's got her locked down. After what happened, she's probably under guard. He told her both babies died. She's grieving for children she thinks are in the ground." "Then we find another way." Clara's jaw set. "There's Elena Vasquez. She's worked for Prescott for 15 years. She knows everything that goes on in that house. If anyone can get a message to Adelaide, it's her." "You know Elena?" "She comes to the school sometimes to bring donations from the Prescott household. Clothes the family doesn't want anymore." Clara's mouth thinned. "Prescott likes to be seen as charitable. It's part of the act. But Elena and I have talked. Not about Prescott directly, but she's dropped hints. Things about how Adelaide is treated. Things about what goes on behind those walls. Can you trust her?"
Clara was quiet for a moment. I think Elena has been waiting for someone to ask her that question for a long time. Then talk to her. Today, before Prescott makes his move. Clara nodded. But Jesse, there's something else. Even if we get Adelaide on our side, even if Elena testifies, Prescott owns this town. The deputy answers to him. The bank answers to him. Half the ranchers owe him money. He can crush anyone who stands against him. Not anyone. Jesse's voice was steady. He can crush people who have something to lose. I lost everything 6 years ago. My wife, my daughter, everything I cared about. I've spent 6 years with nothing to live for and nothing to die for. He looked back toward the house. That changed last night. Clara studied his face. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then she said something that caught him off guard. I know what it's like, she said quietly, to lose the thing you wanted most. To wake up every morning with that empty space inside you and know nothing will ever fill it. Jesse waited. I can't have children, Clara said. William and I tried for 8 years. Every time I hold a baby, every time I teach a child to read, I feel it. That hole. That wanting. She swallowed hard. When I walked into your cabin last night and saw that little girl holding her sister, I felt something I haven't felt in years. I felt like maybe there was still a reason to keep going. Clara, I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you so you understand. She met his eyes. I'm not going to walk away from those girls, not because it's the right thing to do, because I can't, because they're already mine. In here. She pressed her fist to her chest. And I will fight Wade Prescott with everything I have to keep them safe. Jesse looked at this woman, the school teacher with the quiet strength and the broken heart and the fire in her eyes that matched his own. And he felt something shift inside him, something that had been frozen for 6 years beginning to crack. We fight together, he said. Clara nodded. Together. She left for town within the hour, wrapped in every layer Jesse could find, riding his second horse through snow that came up to the stirrups. Jesse watched her go and felt the absence immediately. The house felt emptier without her, which made no sense. She'd only been there one night.
Papa Jesse? Ruthie was standing in the doorway, baby Eliza in her arms. She'd learned to carry the baby with a steadiness that no 4-year-old should have needed. Get inside, sweetheart. It's too cold. Where did Miss Clara go? To town. She's getting some things we need. Is she coming back? The fear in Ruthie's voice was sharp enough to cut. She's coming back, Jesse said firmly. I promise. Ruthie nodded, but her arms tightened around Eliza. People leave, she said. That's what people do. Mama tried not to leave, but Grandpa made her. Jesse knelt in front of her. Look at me, Ruthie. She looked. I know people have left you. I know grown-ups have let you down. But I'm telling you right now, and I need you to hear me. I ain't leaving. Miss Clara ain't leaving. And nobody is taking you or Eliza away from this house. Not while I'm breathing. Ruthie searched his face with those 2 old eyes. Then she did something she hadn't done before. She leaned forward and wrapped one arm around his neck, still holding Eliza with the other. I believe you, she whispered. And Jesse held them both and let himself believe it too. The hours crawled. Jesse kept the fire high and the rifle close. Ruthie played with a set of wooden spoons Jesse gave her, making up stories in a quiet voice while Eliza slept. At one point, Ruthie lined up the spoons and announced that the big one was Papa Jesse. The medium one was Miss Clara.
and the two little ones were her and Eliza. "We're a family," she said matter-of-factly. "Like the families in the picture books at school." Jesse didn't correct her. Couldn't. It was late afternoon when he heard the horse approaching. He grabbed the rifle and went to the window. Clara was riding hard, her face flushed, her eyes wild. Jesse met her on the porch. "What happened?" Clara dismounted and grabbed his arm. "Helena, I found her at the market. She knows everything, Jesse. She knows what Prescott did." "Tell me."
Adelaide had twins. Clara's voice was urgent, breathless. Nobody knew it was twins until the birth. Prescott was already furious about one baby. When he found out there were two, he lost his mind. He told Adelaide both babies were stillborn, made Dr. Cole sign the death certificates. Jesse's blood went cold. Doc Cole signed off on this? Elena says Prescott threatened him, threatened to expose some debt Cole owes to the bank, threatened his family. Cole signed under duress, but he signed. That means the babies officially don't exist. Prescott's covered his tracks. It's worse than that. Clara lowered her voice. Elena told me Prescott has already heard that you brought children to your ranch. He doesn't know for certain they're Adelaide's, but he suspects. And Jesse, he's sending Frank Harlan out here tomorrow morning, with papers. What kind of papers? A warrant to search the property, and a writ of abandonment. If those children can't be identified as belonging to anyone, they become wards of the county. And guess who controls the county? Prescott. Elena said one more thing. Clara's hands were shaking now, and Jesse wasn't sure if it was cold or fear. Thomas Callahan, Adelaide's sweetheart, the father of those babies. Prescott told Adelaide he was dead, told her Thomas was killed in a mining accident. And was he? Elena doesn't think so. She thinks Prescott paid men to run Thomas out of the territory, threatened to kill him if he ever came back. But she's heard rumors that Thomas is working at a silver mine up near Cutter's Pass, about 50 miles north. Jesse's mind was racing. If Thomas Callahan was alive, he had legal rights to his children, rights that even Prescott couldn't override. "I need to find him," Jesse said. "You can't leave." Clara grabbed his arm. "If you're gone when Harlan comes tomorrow, he'll take the girls. There'll be nobody here to stop him." "Then you stay with them. Hide them if you have to. There's a root cellar under the kitchen floor, trap doors under the rug. And behind the cellar wall, there's a tunnel that comes out behind the barn. I built it after the fire." "Jesse, I can't." "You can. You're the strongest person I know, and I've known you one day." Jesse took her hands. "Those girls trust you. Eliza calms down the minute you hold her. Ruthie looks at you like she's been waiting for you." Clara's eyes filled. "Don't say that. It's true. You know it's true." She was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled her hands free and wiped her eyes. "How long?" she asked. 3 days. 2 to get to Cutter's Pass. 1 to convince Thomas Callahan that his children are alive and his woman needs him. I'll ride through the night." "And if Prescott comes before you get back?" "Not Harlan. Prescott himself." Jesse reached into his coat and pulled out a second pistol. He pressed it into Clara's hands. "Then you do what you have to do." Clara looked at the gun. Then she looked at Jesse, and something passed between them that neither of them could name. "I'll protect them," she said, "with my life if I have to." Jesse nodded. He turned to go inside, and Clara caught his sleeve. "Jesse." It was the first time she'd used his first name. "Come back. Whatever happens at Cutter's Pass, whatever you find or don't find, come back." He looked at her. The snow was falling again, soft this time, dusting her auburn hair with white.
Her eyes were brown and warm and full of something that scared him more than Prescott ever could. "I'll come back," he said. "I promise." Inside, he packed fast: ammunition, food, a bedroll. Ruthie watched him from the bed, her face tight with understanding. "You're leaving," she said. "Just for a little while." Ruthie's chin trembled, but she didn't cry. She'd used up all her tears for the day. Maybe for the year. Jessie knelt beside the bed. "Listen to me, little one. I'm going to find someone important, someone who can help keep you and Eliza safe forever." "Who?" "Your daddy." Ruthie blinked. "I have a daddy?" "You have a daddy. His name is Thomas, and he doesn't know you're here. He doesn't know you're alive. I'm going to find him and bring him back." "Does he love me?" Jessie's heart cracked right down the middle. "He doesn't know you, yet. But the moment he sees you, he's going to love you more than anything in this world. I guarantee it." "How do you know?" "Because that's what happened to me." Jessie touched her cheek. "The moment I saw you standing in that snow, holding your sister, I loved you. Didn't plan on it, didn't ask for it, but there it was. And your daddy's going to feel the same thing. I promise." Ruthie leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. It was such a grown-up gesture, so tender and serious, that Jessie nearly broke. "Come back fast, Papa Jessie." "Fast as I can." He kissed the top of her head. Then he leaned over and pressed his lips to baby Eliza's forehead. The baby stirred, made a soft sound, and went back to sleep. "Take care of your sister," Jessie told Ruthie. "And take care of Miss Clara for me." Ruthie nodded solemnly. "I will. I'm good at taking care of people." "I know you are." Jessie stood. He looked at Clara, who was standing by the door with her arms crossed, keeping herself together by sheer force. "3 days," he said. 3 days. He walked out into the snow and mounted Buck. The cold hit him like a wall, but he barely felt it. His mind was already 50 miles north, already at Cutter's Pass, already telling a young man named Thomas Callahan that his daughters were alive and his world was about to change. Jessie kicked Buck into a gallop and rode into the darkness. Behind him, Clara bolted the door and checked the pistol and sat down beside 2 sleeping children. Outside, the snow fell harder. And somewhere in Elkhorn Creek, in a house that was too big and too cold and too quiet, Adelaide Prescott knelt beside 2 small empty graves in the family cemetery and wept for daughters she believed were dead. And in his study, behind locked doors, Marshal Wade Prescott read the report from Frank Harlan. 2 children at the Thornton Ranch, a girl about 4, a newborn. Prescott set down the paper. His hands were perfectly steady. He picked up a pen and wrote a single note. "Bring them to me, whatever it takes." Then he sealed the envelope, rang for his man, and smiled the smile of a man who had never once failed to get what he wanted. But Wade Prescott had never met Jessie Thornton, had never met Clara Whitfield, had never reckoned with a 4-year-old girl who'd stood barefoot in a blizzard and refused to let her sister die. And that was going to cost him everything. Clara didn't sleep that first night alone with the children. She sat in Jessie's chair by the window, with the pistol in her lap, and listened to every sound the wind made. The cabin creaked and groaned under the weight of snow on the roof. Eliza woke twice to feed. Ruthie talked in her sleep, fragments of sentences that made Clara's chest ache. "Don't take her. Please don't take her. I'll be good." By morning, Clara's eyes were burning, and her back ached from the wooden chair. But when Ruthie woke up and looked around the room with that flash of panic Clara was already learning to recognize, Clara was right there. "I'm here, sweetheart. I didn't go anywhere." Ruthie relaxed. "Where's Papa Jesse?" "He's finding your daddy, remember?" Ruthie nodded. She climbed out of bed and padded over to check on Eliza, who was still sleeping. Then she walked to Clara and climbed into her lap without asking. She just did it, like it was the most natural thing in the world, like she'd always done it. Clara's arms closed around her automatically. Ruthie weighed almost nothing. She smelled like wood smoke and milk and something else. Something sweet and sad that Clara couldn't name. "Miss Clara? If Papa Jesse brings my daddy back, will my daddy take us away?" Clara's hands stilled. She hadn't thought about that, hadn't let herself think about it. Thomas Callahan was these children's father. He had every right to take them wherever he pleased. "I don't know, sweetheart. We'll have to wait and see." "I don't want to go away." Ruthie's voice was small but certain. "I want to stay here, with you and Papa Jesse." Clara pressed her lips to the top of Ruthie's head and didn't say anything, because there was nothing she could say that wouldn't be a lie or a promise she couldn't keep. They had breakfast. Clara fed Eliza while Ruthie ate porridge and talked about the wooden spoon family she'd created yesterday. She'd added a new member overnight, a slightly crooked spoon she'd found in a drawer. "That's Elena," Ruthie explained. "She's the one who sneaks Mama food when Grandpa isn't looking. She's brave, but she doesn't know she's brave." Clara looked at this 4-year-old girl who understood people better than most adults and marveled at the resilience of children, at their terrible, beautiful ability to keep loving even after love had hurt them. The knock came just before noon. Clara's whole body went rigid. She set Eliza down in the makeshift crib Jessie had fashioned from a feed box and blankets, then grabbed Ruthie's hand. "Listen to me. We practiced this, remember? You take Eliza and go down into the cellar, through the trap door. Can you do that?" Ruthie's face went white, but she nodded. She didn't cry, didn't argue. She just picked up her sister with that careful, practiced grip and waited. Clara pulled up the rug, opened the trap door, and helped Ruthie down the ladder. The cellar was dark and cold and smelled like earth. "Ruthie," Clara knelt at the opening. "If anything happens, if you hear anything bad, you take Eliza through the tunnel behind the back wall. It comes out behind the barn. You run and you don't look back." "Where do I run to?" Clara's throat tightened. "You run until you find someone kind, and you tell them your name, and you tell them you need help." Ruthie looked up at her from the darkness. Her blue eyes were steady, steadier than Clara's. "You come back for us, Miss Clara. Promise." "I promise." Clara closed the trap door, replaced the rug, and picked up the pistol. Her hands were shaking. She'd never fired a gun in her life. William had shown her once, years ago, how to hold a revolver. She remembered the weight of it, the kick, the noise. She could do this. She had to do this. She opened the front door. Frank Harlan stood on the porch with 2 men behind him. He was holding a folded piece of paper and looking like he'd rather be anywhere else on earth. "Miss Whitfield." Harlan tipped his hat. "Didn't expect to find you here, Deputy Harlan. What can I do for you?" "I've got a warrant." Harlan held up the paper without unfolding it. "Signed by Marshal Prescott. Authorizes a search of this property for 2 unidentified minors reported found in the vicinity." "There are no unidentified minors here," Clara said. Harlan shifted his weight. "Ma'am, I have to search the premises. That's the law." "Whose law?" Clara didn't move from the doorway. "Prescott's law?" Harlan's jaw tightened. "I don't make the law, Miss Whitfield. I just carry it out." And if those children were here, what then? You'd take them? Give them to Prescott? I'd take them to town. Place them with a proper guardian until their family could be identified. Their family is the reason they nearly died. Clara's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. You know that, don't you, Frank? You know exactly what happened to those children and why. Harlan flinched. It was small, just a flicker around his eyes, but Clara caught it.
"I don't know what you're talking about," he said. "Yes, you do." Clara stepped forward, and Harlan actually stepped back. A schoolteacher in a cotton dress, backing down a deputy with a badge and a gun. "You know Wade Prescott paid a man to abandon 2 babies in a blizzard. You know his daughter is locked in that house, grieving for children she thinks are dead. You know all of it. And you're standing here with a warrant to help him finish what he started." The 2 men behind Harlan exchanged uneasy glances. Harlan's face reddened. "I've got a job to do, Miss Whitfield. You've got a choice to make." Clara's voice dropped. "A man is coming back with those children's father. A man with legal rights that Prescott can't override. When that happens, everything Prescott has done is going to come out. Every lie, every threat, every crime. And everyone who helped him is going to answer for it." She looked at the 2 men behind Harlan. Every single one. The men wouldn't meet her eyes. Harlan stood there for a long moment, the warrant in his hand, the weight of his decisions on his face. He looked old suddenly, tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. "I have to search the property," he said finally. But his voice had changed, quieter now. "Then search it." Clara stepped aside. "You won't find anything." Harlan walked in. His men followed. They searched the cabin methodically, but without urgency. Harlan opened cupboards, looked under the bed, checked the lean-to off the back. He stood in the middle of the kitchen, directly on top of the rug that covered the trap door. Clara's heart stopped. Harlan looked down at the rug, looked at Clara, looked at the rug again. "Nothing here," he said. He turned to his men. "Check the barn." They searched the barn, the outhouse, the chicken coop, the woodshed. Nothing. Nobody. 2 men and a deputy walking through snow and finding exactly what Clara had told them they'd find. Harlan came back to the porch. His men were already mounted, waiting. "I'll file my report," Harlan said. "Property searched, no minors found." He looked at Clara one more time. "Whatever you're doing, Miss Whitfield, do it fast. Prescott's not going to send me next time. He's going to come himself. And he won't be polite about it." "Frank," Clara caught his arm. "Why did you do that?" Harlan was quiet for a moment. "I had a daughter once," he said. "She died of scarlet fever when she was 3. He pulled his arm free. "Some things a man can't live with, no matter who's giving the orders." He mounted his horse and rode away. Clara waited until they disappeared over the ridge before she fell to her knees on the porch and let herself shake. Then she got up, went inside, and opened the trap door. Ruthie was sitting in the dark cellar with Eliza in her arms, humming softly. When the light hit her face, she looked up at Clara with those ancient eyes. "Is the bad man gone?" "He's gone." Clara reached down and lifted Eliza first, then helped Ruthie up the ladder. "They're all gone. Was it Grandpa?" "No, just a man who works for him." Ruthie was quiet for a moment. "He stood on the rug," she said, "right on top of us. I heard his boots." "I know, baby, I know. But he didn't look." Ruthie tilted her head, puzzling it out. Why didn't he look? Clara thought about Frank Harlan and his dead daughter, and the look in his eyes when he chose to walk away. "Because sometimes," Clara said carefully, "even people who do wrong things can still do one right thing when it matters most." Ruthie considered this with the seriousness of a judge. Then she nodded. Like the man who left us in the wagon. He was supposed to take us far away, but he couldn't do it. He cried, Miss Clara. He cried when he left us. I saw his face. Clara pulled both girls close and held them, and said nothing, because some things were too big for words. 200 miles to the north, Jessie Thornton was dying. Not from cold, though the cold was trying its best. Not from exhaustion, though he hadn't slept in 2 days. He was dying from the clock in his head that wouldn't stop ticking. Every hour that passed was another hour Clara was alone with those children. Another hour Prescott had to plan his next move. Buck was struggling. The old horse had given everything he had, but the mountain trail to Cutter's Pass was steep, icy, and treacherous in ways that flat prairie never was. Twice the horse stumbled. Once they both nearly went over a ledge. Jessie dismounted and led Buck on foot through the worst stretches, breaking trail through waist-deep snow while the wind tried to push them both off the mountain. On the morning of the second day, he found the mining camp. Cutter's Pass was nothing more than a collection of tents and shacks clinging to the side of a mountain like barnacles on a ship. Men moved between the structures with the slow, heavy gait of people who worked underground and carried the mountain's weight in their bones. Jessie rode in looking half dead. A man at the entrance, big, bearded, with a shotgun across his knees, stood up as he approached. "Help you, stranger?" "I'm looking for a man named Thomas Callahan. Works the silver mine." The bearded man studied Jessie with suspicious eyes. "Who's asking?" "Name's Jessie Thornton. I'm from Elkhorn Creek. I've got news about his family. News that can't wait." The man's expression didn't change. "Lot of men up here are hiding from something. Some of them don't want to be found." "This man does. He just doesn't know it yet." The bearded man considered this. Then he jerked his thumb toward the largest shack. "End of shifts in an hour. He'll come out covered in silver dust. Young fella, sandy hair. Got a look about him like he lost something he can't stop looking for." Jessie tied Buck to a post and waited. The hour felt like a week. When the miners came out, Jessie spotted Thomas Callahan immediately. The bearded man was right. There was something about the way the young man moved, the way his eyes swept the horizon like he was searching for someone who wasn't there. He was 25, maybe 26, lean from hard work, hands scarred from the mines. But his face was young, almost boyish, and his eyes had a softness that mining and heartbreak hadn't managed to kill. "Thomas Callahan?" The young man stopped. His body went tense. "Who's asking?" "Jessie Thornton. I'm a rancher from Elkhorn Creek." Thomas's face closed like a door slamming shut. "I don't know anyone in Elkhorn Creek. Not anymore." "You know Adelaide Prescott." Thomas flinched like Jessie had hit him. "Don't say that name." He turned to walk away. "I can't help you. Whatever this is, I can't." Jessie grabbed his arm. Thomas tried to shake him off. Jessie held on. "Let go of me, old man. You have 2 daughters." Thomas froze. The fight went out of him so fast it was like watching a man deflate. "What did you say?" "I said you have 2 daughters. Twins. Adelaide gave birth to twins about 3 weeks ago. A girl named Ruthie. She's 4. "Wait," Jessie caught himself. "That ain't right. Ruthie's 4. She was born first. The baby is the twin of no one. She's the second child, a newborn. Adelaide named her baby because Prescott took them before she could give her a proper name." Thomas was shaking his head. No, that's not possible." "Adelaide told me. Charlotte told me the letter said she lost the baby. Complications. The baby died." There was no letter from Adelaide. There was no complication. Prescott lied. He told Adelaide both her children were dead. Then he paid a man to take them out into a blizzard and leave them to die. Thomas staggered. Jesse caught him. "Easy, I've got you. Sit down." They sat on a wooden bench outside the shack. Thomas's face was gray. His hands were shaking so badly he couldn't hold them still. "Both?" he whispered. "Twins?" Jesse frowned. "You didn't know about Ruthie?" Thomas shook his head. "Adelaide was pregnant when Prescott ran me off. She was maybe 4 months along. I didn't even know if she'd had the baby, let alone." He pressed his palms against his eyes. "Wait, you said Ruthie is 4 years old. That can't be right. I was with Adelaide 2 years ago." Jesse went still. "You're telling me Ruthie isn't yours?" Thomas dropped his hands. "I don't know who Ruthie is. Adelaide didn't have any other children, not that I knew of." Jesse's mind raced. Ruthie had called Adelaide Mama, had talked about Prescott as Grandpa. If Thomas wasn't Ruthie's father, then who was? "It don't matter right now," Jesse said. "What matters is that both those girls are alive. They're at my ranch, being protected by a woman I trust with my life." "But Prescott knows they're there. He's already sent men." "He's going to keep coming until he gets them." Thomas's face changed. The grief and shock burned away, and what was left underneath was something harder, something Jesse recognized. "He tried to kill them," Thomas said. "His own grandchildren. His own blood." His own blood. Thomas stood up. His whole body was vibrating with a fury that seemed too big for his lean frame. "Where is Adelaide?" "Still in Prescott's house. He's got her under guard. She thinks both babies are dead. She's been grieving for weeks." Thomas's fists clenched. "I'm going to kill him." "No, you're going to do something worse." Jesse stood and faced him. "You're going to take everything from him. His name, his power, his reputation, everything he spent his life building. You're going to stand up in front of God and the law and tell the world what Wade Prescott really is." "A court won't touch him. He owns the courts." "Not all of them. There's a federal judge, Judge Amos Whitaker, rides circuit through the territory. He's been looking at Prescott for years. Land fraud, bank manipulation. But he never had enough to make a case." Jesse leaned forward. "Attempted murder of 2 infants, a daughter held prisoner, a man driven from the territory by threats. That's enough. That's more than enough." Thomas was quiet for a long moment. The wind cut through the mining camp, carrying the sound of pickaxes and men's voices from deep in the earth. "I left her," Thomas said. His voice cracked. "Adelaide begged me to stay. She begged me to fight for her. And I ran. Because Prescott said he'd kill me. Because I was scared." "You were 23 years old, and the most powerful man in the territory wanted you dead. Being scared doesn't make you a coward. Running doesn't make you a coward." "Then what does?" "Not going back." Jesse put his hand on the young man's shoulder. "Knowing your woman is trapped, and your children are alive, and choosing to stay here in this mine. That would make you a coward." "So what's it going to be, Thomas Callahan?" Thomas looked at him. The softness in his eyes was still there, but now it was wrapped in something stronger. Something that looked like the beginning of the man he was about to become. "When do we leave?" "Right now." They rode out of Cutter's Pass within the hour. Thomas borrowed a horse from a miner he'd befriended, a sturdy mare named Copper, who was used to mountain trails. They pushed hard, riding through the night, taking turns sleeping in the saddle while the other led both horses.
Thomas talked as they rode. About Adelaide, about how they'd met when he came to work on Prescott's ranch, about how she'd sneak out of the house at night to meet him by the creek, about the first time she told him she loved him, and the first time Prescott caught them and beat Adelaide so badly she couldn't leave her room for a week. "I should have taken her then," Thomas said. "Just grabbed her and run. But she said we had to be smart."
She said her father would hunt us to the ends of the earth if we just disappeared. She said we needed a plan. But Prescott moved first. He always moves first. That's how he wins. He controls the game before you even know you're playing. "Not this time," Jesse said. "This time we're already on the board, and we've got pieces he doesn't know about." They reached the outskirts of Elkhorn Creek on the morning of the third day. Jesse pulled up on a ridge overlooking the town and felt his stomach drop. Prescott's carriage was parked in front of the sheriff's office. 4 horses tied up outside. More men than usual moving through the streets. "He's mobilizing," Jesse said. "Getting ready to make his move." Thomas's face was pale but set. "Is Adelaide down there?" "In that big house on the hill. See it?" Thomas nodded. He stared at the house like he could see through the walls. Like if he looked hard enough, he could reach her. "We go to the ranch first," Jesse said. "Make sure Clara and the girls are safe. Then we plan." They rode the long way around, avoiding the main road. When Jesse's ranch came into view, he felt something loosen in his chest. Smoke from the chimney. The door was intact. No horses out front that shouldn't be there. Clara must have been watching, because the door flew open before they reached the porch. She stood in the doorway with a pistol at her side, and relief breaking across her face like sunrise. "Thank God," she breathed. "Jesse, we made it." Jesse dismounted, and for one moment, just one, he let himself put his hand on her arm, held it there, felt her warmth. "I brought him. Clara, this is Thomas Callahan." Thomas dismounted and stood in the snow, staring at the doorway behind Clara. His whole body was trembling. A small face appeared beside Clara's skirt. Ruthie looked up at the stranger with those blue eyes that missed nothing. Thomas sank to his knees in the snow. He was looking at Ruthie's face, at Adelaide's eyes staring back at him from a child he'd never met. His mouth opened. No sound came out. Ruthie looked at Jesse. "Is this my daddy?" Jesse nodded, unable to speak. Ruthie studied Thomas for a long time. Then she walked forward through the snow, barefoot again because she'd kicked off her shoes inside, and stood in front of the man who was supposed to have been there from the beginning. "You came back," she said. "Papa Jesse said you'd come." Thomas broke. He reached for her, and she let him pull her into his arms, and he held her in the snow and cried with a sound that was half grief and half joy, and entirely the sound of a man who'd just discovered he had a reason to live. "You're real," Thomas whispered. "You're real. You're alive." Ruthie patted his cheek with one small hand. "Don't cry, Daddy. Eliza's inside. She's sleeping. You can meet her when she wakes up. Miss Clara takes real good care of her." Thomas looked up at Clara through his tears. Clara smiled, and her own eyes were streaming. "Come inside," Clara said. "Both of you. There's coffee, and there's warmth, and there are 2 little girls who need their family around them." Thomas stood with Ruthie in his arms. The little girl wrapped herself around him like she'd been waiting for exactly this her whole life, which, Jesse realized, she had. They went inside. The door closed against the cold, and for one brief, perfect moment, the world outside, with all its danger and cruelty and power, fell away, and there was nothing but firelight and warmth and the sound of a baby waking up to meet her father for the first time. But the moment couldn't last. Jessie knew it. Clara knew it. Even Ruthie, with her 4-year-old wisdom, seemed to sense that the peace was borrowed, not earned. Because down in Elkhorn Creek, Marshal Wade Prescott had just received Frank Harlan's report. Property searched. No minors found. And Prescott knew Harlan was lying. He folded the report carefully and set it aside. Then he called for his foreman, a man named Briggs, big, quiet, the kind of man who did what he was told and never asked questions. "Harlan's done," Prescott said. "I want you to ride out to the Thornton Ranch tonight. Take 4 men, armed." "What are my orders, sir?" "Bring me the children." Prescott's voice was perfectly calm. "And anyone who gets in the way, remove them." Briggs nodded once and left. Prescott sat alone in his study. He picked up the photograph on his desk. Adelaide, at 16, smiling. Before everything went wrong. His hand trembled, just for a moment. Just long enough to show that somewhere beneath the ice, something human still existed. Then he put the photograph face down and poured himself a whiskey and drank it without tasting it. And outside, the snow began to fall again. Thomas held baby Eliza for the first time, sitting in the chair by the fire. Clara placed her in his arms carefully, showing him how to support her head, how to cradle her against his chest. Thomas's hands were rough from the mines, scarred and calloused, but they were gentle, so gentle that Clara had to look away. "She's so small," Thomas whispered. "How can a person be this small?" "She was smaller when Jessie found them," Clara said. "She's gained weight. She's a good eater." Eliza opened her eyes and looked up at the stranger holding her. She didn't cry. She just studied his face with that serious newborn stare, like she was deciding something important. Then she yawned and closed her eyes and went back to sleep. Thomas let out a breath he'd been holding since Cutter's Pass. "She looks like Adelaide," he said. "Same nose, same chin. She's going to look just like her mama." Ruthie climbed up onto the arm of the chair and peered down at her sister. "She does that with Papa Jesse, too. Falls asleep right away. It means she trusts you. Babies know." Thomas looked at Jesse, who was standing by the window doing what he always did, watching. "Thank you," Thomas said. The words were thick and clumsy and completely inadequate. "For everything. For finding them. For keeping them alive. For coming to get me." Jesse shook his head. "Don't thank me yet. We've got a long night ahead." Clara moved to the kitchen and started making coffee. The domesticity of it felt strange against the tension that filled the cabin. Like preparing tea before a battle. "Tell me," Thomas said. "Everything that's happened. Everything Prescott's done since I left." Jesse told him. Rose's information about the paid man, Frank Harlan's search, Clara's conversation with Elena Vasquez, the warrant, the death certificates Dr. Cole had signed. All of it. Thomas listened with his jaw getting tighter and his eyes getting harder with every word. "He made Cole sign death certificates," Thomas repeated. "So legally, these babies don't exist." "That's right. And as long as they don't exist, Prescott can do whatever he wants with them. Then we make them exist." Thomas's voice was steady. "We go to town. We show the world these children are alive. We make Prescott look the whole town in the face and explain why he told his daughter they were dead." "It's not that simple," Clara said, setting down coffee cups. "Prescott controls the town. The deputy works for him. The bank works for him. Half the people in Elkhorn Creek owe him money or favors. Even if we walk down Main Street with both girls in our arms, who's going to stand against him? Someone will, Thomas said. Someone always does. You've been gone 2 years. Clara sat down across from him. You don't know what it's been like. Prescott's gotten worse, more controlling, more paranoid. He drove out the Hendersons last spring, took the Foley Ranch for back taxes that everybody knows were fabricated. People are afraid, really afraid. Then we give them a reason to stop being afraid. Jesse turned from the window. The boy's right. Fear only works as long as people believe there's no alternative. The moment they see someone stand up and survive, the whole thing falls apart. Clara looked at both of them. 2 men with fire in their eyes and children to protect. She wanted to believe them. She wanted to believe that courage was enough. There's something else, she said quietly. I've been thinking about Adelaide, about how to get to her. Elena said she's under guard, barely allowed out of her room. But there's one thing Prescott can't control. What's that? Sunday service. Clara leaned forward. Adelaide goes to church every Sunday. Prescott insists on it. It's part of the show, the perfect family, the devoted daughter. He makes her sit in the front pew and smile, while Pastor Grimes preaches about family values and obedience. Thomas's face twisted. He makes her perform. He makes her survive. There's a difference. Adelaide does what she has to do to get through each day. But in church, she's in public. Prescott can't drag her out without causing a scene. If Thomas could get to her there, if she could see him, see that he's alive and he's come back for her, she'd know, Thomas said. She'd know everything had changed. Sunday's in 2 days, Jesse said. Then we wait, Clara said. We keep the girls hidden. We stay quiet. And on Sunday morning, Thomas walks into that church, and Adelaide sees the man she loves for the first time in 2 years. Jesse didn't like waiting. Every minute they sat still was a minute Prescott could use to tighten his grip. But Clara was right. The church was the one place Adelaide could be reached, the one place Prescott's control had a crack in it. We take shifts tonight, Jesse said. I'll watch till midnight. Thomas, you take midnight to dawn. Clara, get some sleep. You've earned it. Clara shook her head. I'm not tired. You haven't slept in 3 days. Jesse's voice was firm but gentle. Those girls need you sharp. Go sleep. Clara looked like she wanted to argue. Then she looked at Ruthie and Eliza, both asleep on the bed, curled together the way they always were. Ruthie's arm draped protectively over her sister. Wake me if anything happens, Clara said. She lay down on the far side of the bed, careful not to disturb the children. Within minutes, her breathing evened out. Ruthie shifted in her sleep and pressed closer to Clara, her small hand finding the fabric of Clara's sleeve and holding on. Thomas watched them. Your woman? He asked Jesse quietly. Jesse was quiet for a long moment. I don't know what she is. I know what I want her to be. She loves those girls like they're her own. I know. And they love her. Ruthie talks about Miss Clara like she hung the moon. I know that too. Thomas took a sip of coffee. What happens after? If we beat Prescott? If Adelaide's free? These children have a mother and a father they don't need. He stopped. Jesse finished for him. They don't need a broken-down cowboy and a school teacher pretending to be their parents. That what you were going to say? Thomas winced. I didn't mean it like that. Yeah, you did. And you're not wrong. Jesse sat down across from him. Those are your children. Adelaide's children. I know that. Clara knows that. The moment this is over,
You have every right to take them and go wherever you please." "But—" Jesse's hands tightened around his coffee cup. "But that little girl in there called me Papa the first night I found her. And I haven't been anybody's papa in 6 years. My daughter Eliza, my first Eliza, she died while I was 200 miles away selling cattle. I wasn't there. Couldn't hold her. Couldn't say goodbye." Thomas was very still. "When Ruthie said she wanted to name the baby Eliza, so my girl's name wouldn't be lonely anymore, something happened in me that I can't undo. Don't want to undo." Jesse looked Thomas straight in the eyes. "I'm not trying to take your children, but I'm not going to pretend they didn't save my life." Thomas was quiet for a long time. Then he said something Jesse didn't expect. "Adelaide used to talk about you, before Prescott ran me off. She said there was a rancher outside of town who'd lost his family in a terrible way. She said he was the saddest man she'd ever seen, but also the most decent. She said if anything ever happened to her, she hoped someone like you would be there." Jesse didn't know what to do with that. "We'll figure it out," Thomas said. "After. When the girls are safe and Adelaide's free. We'll figure out how to be a family, however that looks. Because right now, those children have 4 people who love them, and that's a lot more than most kids get." Jesse nodded. For the first time since Thomas Callahan had ridden into his life, the knot in his chest loosened. The sound came at 3 in the morning. Horses, multiple, moving fast through deep snow. Jesse was at the window with his rifle before the sound fully registered. Thomas was beside him a heartbeat later. "How many?" Thomas whispered. Jesse counted the shadows moving through the darkness. 5 riders, armed, moving in formation. "That ain't a search party," Jesse said. "That's a raid." Clara was already awake, already moving. She'd slept in her clothes, boots on, like she'd known this was coming. She scooped up Eliza and shook Ruthie gently. "Sweetheart, wake up. We need to go downstairs." Ruthie's eyes opened. No panic this time. Just that terrible calm that broke Clara's heart every time she saw it. "The bad men are coming," Ruthie said. Not a question. "We're going to be fine," Clara said. "Come on." Jesse grabbed Clara's arm as she passed. "Take them through the tunnel. Get to the tree line and wait. If you hear gunshots, run. Don't look back." "I'm not leaving you, Clara." Jesse's voice was raw. "I can't fight if I'm worried about you. Please, take the girls and go." Clara looked at him. In the darkness, with the sound of hooves getting louder, she reached up and touched his face. "Come find us," she said. "When it's over, come find us." "I will, I swear it." Clara disappeared through the trapdoor with both children. Jesse heard the scrape of the tunnel entrance, then silence. He turned to Thomas. The young man was holding a rifle Jesse had given him, his face pale but set. "You any good with that?" Jesse asked. "I've been shooting since I was 12. "Good. There's 5 of them. 2 of us. We don't have to win. We just have to hold them off long enough for Clara to get clear." Thomas nodded. "Then what?" "Then we give Prescott something he's never had before. A fight he can't buy his way out of." The riders pulled up outside. Jesse heard voices, low, businesslike. The creak of leather as men dismounted. "Thornton!" a voice bellowed from the darkness. "This is Briggs. I work for Marshal Prescott." "Open the door, and this stays peaceful." Jesse positioned himself by the window. Thomas moved to the back, covering the rear. "Ain't nothing peaceful about 5 armed men riding up on a man's property at 3 in the morning, Jesse called back. "We've got legal authority to search these premises and take possession of any minors found on the property." "Legal authority from who?"
A man who tried to murder his own granddaughters? Silence. Then Briggs's voice, harder now. I don't know anything about that. I've got orders, and I intend to carry them out. You can open the door, or we can open it for you. Your choice. Jesse checked his rifle. 12 rounds, plus the pistol with 6. Seems to me you boys have a choice too, Jesse called. You can ride back to Prescott and tell him there's no children here, or you can try to come through that door and find out what a man with nothing to lose does when you threaten his family. Your family? Briggs laughed. Those ain't your children, Thornton. You're just a broken-down cowboy playing house. The words hit the same place Crawford's had hit in the story Caleb once lived. The same wound, the same knife. But this time, Jesse didn't flinch. You're right, Jesse said. They ain't mine by blood. But I held that baby against my chest when she was dying. I carried that little girl through a blizzard. I sang them to sleep, and I fed them, and I watched them come back to life. And if that don't make them mine, then nothing does. Thomas's hand tightened on his rifle. His eyes were burning. Last chance, Thornton. Jesse cocked his rifle. The sound was loud in the quiet cabin. Come and try. The first man hit the door. Jesse fired through the wood, and the man screamed and fell back. The second came through the window on the left. Thomas dropped him with a single shot to the shoulder. The man crumpled, howling. The other 3 scattered. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Bullets punched through the cabin walls, sending splinters flying. Jesse dropped to the floor and fired back through the shattered window, aiming at muzzle flashes in the dark. Thornton! Briggs was screaming now, all pretense of civility gone. You're a dead man! You hear me? Dead! A bullet tore through the wall, inches from Jesse's head. He rolled, came up, fired. Heard a grunt of pain from outside. Thomas was at the back window, firing with a calm precision that surprised Jesse. 3 shots, measured and steady. A man outside cried out, and the sound of running boots told Jesse at least one of them was retreating. Then, silence. The terrible, ringing silence that follows gunfire. Jesse pressed himself against the wall and listened. His ears were humming. Blood was running down his cheek from a splinter cut, but he barely noticed. How many? Thomas whispered. 2 down, 1 running. That leaves Briggs and 1 more. A voice came from outside. Different this time. Not Briggs. Higher, younger, scared. Briggs is hit. We're pulling back. You hear me? We're pulling back. Don't shoot. Jesse didn't move. Didn't lower the rifle. Take your wounded and go, Jesse called. Tell Prescott what happened here. Tell him the next time he sends men to my property, they won't ride back. Sounds of movement. Groaning. Horses. Slowly, painfully, the riders collected their wounded and mounted up. This ain't over, Briggs's voice came, weak and strained. Prescott will burn you out. He'll burn this whole ranch to the ground. Jesse felt the words hit him like a physical blow. Burn. Fire. The same fire that took Mary and Eliza. The same fire that haunted every nightmare. Thomas saw Jesse's face change, saw the color drain out of it. Jesse. Thomas grabbed his arm. Jesse, stay with me. That was a threat. Just words. Jesse blinked, came back. The past receded, and the present rushed in. I'm all right, he said, but his voice shook. The riders disappeared into the darkness. Jesse waited 10 full minutes, counting his heartbeats, before he moved. Go get Clara and the girls, he told Thomas. They're in the tree line behind the barn. Thomas ran. Jesse stood alone in his bullet-riddled cabin and let himself feel it. The fear, the anger, the fierce, burning love for 2 children who weren't his blood, but were his heart. His hands were still shaking when Clara came through the door with Eliza in her arms and Ruthie clinging to her skirt.
Ruthie saw the bullet holes, saw the broken glass, saw the blood on Jesse's face. She walked straight to him and wrapped her arms around his legs. "You didn't leave," she said. "You stayed." "I stayed." Clara's eyes swept the damage. Then they found Jesse's face and held there. "How bad?" she asked. 5 came. None stayed. A couple won't be riding comfortable for a while. "And next time?" Jesse looked at her. "There ain't going to be a next time. We're ending this. Tomorrow." "Tomorrow's Saturday," Clara said.
"Church isn't until Sunday. We're not waiting for Sunday." Jesse's voice was steel. "Prescott just sent 5 armed men to kill us. The whole town's going to hear about it by morning. By noon, everyone in Elkhorn Creek will know what happened. And that's when we walk in." "With what?" Clara asked. "We still don't have proof." "We have Ruthie's word. We have Elena's willingness to talk. But Prescott's lawyers will tear that apart." "We have something better." Jesse looked at Thomas. "We have him. The man Prescott told Adelaide was dead, walking into town alive and well. And we have these children. The children Prescott told Adelaide were buried in the family cemetery." Thomas stood up straighter. "Adelaide won't need a courtroom. The moment she sees me alive, the moment she sees her daughters, she'll know everything her father told her was a lie. And she'll fight." "You're betting everything on a woman who's been beaten down for 22 years?" Clara said. "What if she can't?" "She can." Thomas's voice was certain. "I know her, better than anyone alive. She's been surviving under that man's roof since she was born. She's stronger than he thinks, stronger than she thinks. She just needs a reason to believe she can win." "She's got 2 reasons," Jesse said, "sleeping right there." They all looked at the bed, where Ruthie and Eliza lay together. Ruthie had positioned herself around the baby, the way she always did, shielding, protecting, holding on. Clara looked at Jesse. "If we do this, there's no going back. Prescott will come at us with everything he has. Lawyers, money, power. He'll try to destroy all of us." "He's already trying." Jesse met her eyes. "The only difference is, now we're fighting back." Clara was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached over and took his hand. Her fingers were warm and steady and strong. "Together," she said. "Together," Jesse said. Thomas put his hand on top of theirs. All 3 of them, bound together by choice and circumstance, and 2 sleeping children who deserved better than what the world had given them. At first light, Jesse rode into town alone. He went straight to Dr. Henry Cole's office. The doctor was just opening up when Jesse pushed through the door. Cole took one look at Jesse's face, the blood, the exhaustion, the fury, and went pale. "Mr. Thornton, what?" "You signed death certificates for 2 babies that aren't dead." Jesse didn't sit, didn't soften it. "You looked Wade Prescott in the eye and you lied on official documents. You know it, and I know it." Cole sank into his chair. His hands were shaking. "I didn't have a choice." "You had a choice. You were just too scared to make the right one." "He threatened my family." Cole's voice cracked. "He said if I didn't sign, he'd call in my debts. I'd lose the practice, my wife, my children. We'd have nothing." "So you let 2 babies die instead." Cole flinched, like Jesse had struck him. "I didn't know he was going to. I thought he was sending them to relatives. He told me he was placing them with a family in Montana. I thought. You thought what he wanted you to think." Jesse leaned over the desk. "But those babies didn't go to Montana. They got left in a blizzard to freeze to death. And the only reason they're alive right now is because I happened to ride by at the right moment." Cole covered his face with his hands. "Here's what's going to happen," Jesse said.
You're going to write a new document, a sworn statement saying you signed those death certificates under duress, that you knew the children were alive when you signed, and that Wade Prescott ordered you to do it. He'll destroy me. He's going to destroy you anyway. The moment this comes out, and it is coming out, you're either going to be the man who helped cover up the attempted murder of 2 infants, or you're going to be the man who told the truth and helped bring Prescott down.
Those are your only 2 options, Doc. Pick one. Cole was silent for a long time. The clock on his wall ticked. Outside, Elkhorn Creek was waking up, unaware that everything was about to change. "I'll write it," Cole said finally. "God forgive me. I'll write it." Jesse nodded. He turned to leave. "Thornton," Cole's voice stopped him. "Those children, are they all right?" Jesse thought about Ruthie standing barefoot in the snow, about Eliza's tiny heartbeat against his chest, about a 4-year-old naming a baby after his dead daughter so her name wouldn't be lonely. "They're alive," Jesse said. "No thanks to you." He walked out and left the doctor with his guilt and his pen, and the choice that should have been easy, but never was. Back at the ranch, Clara was ready. She'd dressed Ruthie in the warmest clothes they could piece together. Eliza was bundled so thick she looked like a cotton ball with eyes. Thomas was pacing the floor, running his hands through his hair, rehearsing words that no rehearsal could prepare him for. "Are you ready?" Clara asked Jesse. Jesse looked at his family, all of them. Clara with her fierce brown eyes, Thomas with his young man's courage, Ruthie holding Eliza with 4-year-old devotion, and baby Eliza herself, sleeping through the revolution like it was nothing at all. "Let's go get Adelaide," Jesse said. They loaded the wagon. Jesse drove. Clara sat beside him with Eliza. Thomas sat in the back with Ruthie in his lap. The little girl was quiet, watching the snow-covered world pass by with those old, old eyes. "Papa Jesse?" Ruthie said as they approached town. "Yeah, little one?" "Is Mama going to be happy to see us?" Jesse's throat tightened. "She's going to be the happiest person you've ever seen." Ruthie thought about this. "Even happier than you were?" Jesse looked back at her. That tiny face, those blue eyes. The girl who'd stood in a blizzard and refused to let her sister die. "Even happier than me," he said, "and that's saying something." They rode into Elkhorn Creek at noon. The streets were busy. People stopped and stared. Word of the gunfight had already spread, just as Jesse predicted. Every eye in town tracked the wagon as it rolled down Main Street. Jesse pulled up in front of the church, not because it was Sunday, because it was the center of town, because everyone could see, because Wade Prescott's house sat on the hill above it, and Jesse wanted the old man to watch what happened next. Thomas climbed down from the wagon. He straightened his coat, squared his shoulders. He was shaking, but he was standing. Clara passed Eliza to Jesse and helped Ruthie down. Then she took Eliza back and stood beside Thomas with both children. Jesse stayed on the wagon, his rifle across his lap, watching. People gathered. Whispers spread like fire through dry grass. "That's the Thornton cowboy. Those are the children." "Is that Thomas Callahan? Didn't he leave 2 years ago?" Thomas looked up at the Prescott house on the hill. "Adelaide," he whispered. "I'm here." And on the hill, behind a window she'd spent 22 years staring through, Adelaide Prescott saw a ghost. A man she'd been told was dead, standing in the town square, alive, real, waiting for her. She pressed her hand to the glass. Her breath fogged the window. Her heart, which had been barely beating for months, slammed against her ribs so hard she thought it would break through. Then she saw the children,
A woman holding a baby. A little girl standing beside her, looking up at the house with eyes that Adelaide recognized, because they were her own eyes looking back at her. Adelaide's knees gave out. She hit the floor.
And from somewhere deep inside her, from the place where she'd buried every hope and every dream and every reason to keep living, a sound came out of her that was not quite a scream and not quite a prayer. It was the sound of a mother who just discovered her children were alive. And it carried all the way down the hill. Adelaide came down the hill running. She came without a coat, without shoes, in nothing but the house dress she'd been wearing when she looked out the window and saw the dead come back to life. Her bare feet hit the frozen ground, and she didn't feel it. Her lungs burned from the cold air, and she didn't care. The only thing that existed in the world was the man standing in the town square, and the children beside him. Prescott's guard tried to stop her at the front gate. A big man named Sykes, who'd been watching her door for weeks. He grabbed her arm, and Adelaide turned on him with a fury that made him let go. "Touch me again," she said, and her voice was a sound nobody in Elkhorn Creek had ever heard from Adelaide Prescott. "Touch me again, and I will kill you where you stand." Sykes stepped back, not because he believed her, because the look in her eyes told him she meant it. Adelaide ran. Thomas saw her first. He made a sound, low and broken, and started walking toward her. Then walking became running, and running became something beyond running. Two people who'd spent 2 years believing they'd lost everything, hurtling toward each other across the frozen ground. They collided in the middle of the street. Thomas caught her, and Adelaide grabbed him, and they held on like the world was trying to tear them apart again, and they would die before they let it. "You're alive." Adelaide was sobbing so hard she could barely form words. "He told me you were dead. He told me you were killed in a cave-in. I mourned you. I mourned you for 2 years. I'm alive." Thomas held her face in his hands. "I'm here. I'm never leaving again. Never. My babies." Adelaide pulled back and looked around wildly. Rosa said, "Thomas, he told me they died. He showed me graves. He made me visit graves and put flowers on empty graves, and I—" Her eyes found Clara, found the bundle in Clara's arms, found the little girl standing beside her. Adelaide stopped breathing. Ruthie looked up at her mother. 4 years old, thin face, blue eyes. Adelaide's eyes. "Mama?" Ruthie said. Adelaide's legs buckled. Thomas caught her, held her upright, but she was reaching, stretching her arms toward Ruthie with a desperation that tore through every person watching. My baby girl. You're real. You're alive. Oh God, you're alive." Ruthie walked forward, slow, careful, the way she did everything. She stopped in front of Adelaide and studied her face with those 2 old eyes. "You're my mama," Ruthie said. "I remember you. You smell like flowers. You used to sing to me at night when Grandpa couldn't hear." Adelaide dropped to her knees in the snow, and Ruthie stepped into her arms, and Adelaide held her daughter for the first time in weeks that had felt like lifetimes. She rocked her and sobbed and said her name over and over like a prayer. "Ruthie, Ruthie, Ruthie, my sweet girl, my brave, brave girl." "Mama, don't cry." Ruthie patted her mother's back with one small hand. "I'm okay. Papa Jesse found us. He kept us safe. Miss Clara, too, and Daddy came back. Everyone came back." Adelaide looked up through her tears. Her eyes found Jesse on the wagon. Then Clara with Eliza. Then Thomas standing over her with his hand on her shoulder. "Both of them?" Adelaide whispered. "Both my babies?" Clara knelt down and placed Eliza in Adelaide's free arm. The baby stirred, opened her eyes, and looked at her mother for the first time since the night she was born. Adelaide held both her children, and the sound she made was beyond crying, beyond joy, beyond anything that had a name. It was the sound of a woman being put back together after being shattered into pieces she thought could never be found. The town square had gone silent. Every person in Elkhorn Creek stood watching. Women were crying openly. Men looked at their boots and swallowed hard. Even Martha Perkins, the banker's wife, who never had a kind word for anyone, had tears running down her face. "This is my family," Thomas said. His voice carried across the square. "These are my children. And Wade Prescott tried to murder them." The whispers started, low at first, then louder. Thomas turned to face the crowd. "He told Adelaide I was dead. He told her both babies died at birth. Then he paid a man to take them into a blizzard and abandon them. If Jesse Thornton hadn't found them, they'd be dead right now." "That's a lie." The voice came from the top of the hill. Wade Prescott walked down the street toward them with the slow, measured stride of a man who owned every inch of ground beneath his feet. He was dressed in his finest coat. His silver hair was combed. His face was calm. But his eyes were not calm. His eyes were the eyes of a man watching his empire crack. "This is a conspiracy," Prescott continued, his voice carrying the authority of 30 years of unchallenged power. "These people are criminals. They've stolen my granddaughters. They've corrupted my daughter. And this man," he pointed at Thomas, "this man was run out of town for seducing a minor, and I was 23, and Adelaide was 20. Thomas stepped forward. "You beat her unconscious for loving me? You threatened to kill me if I didn't leave. And when Adelaide got pregnant, you told her I was dead, so she'd have nobody to turn to but you." Prescott's jaw tightened. "Charlotte," his voice sharpened. "Charlotte, come here." Nobody moved. "Adelaide," he corrected himself, but the slip was telling. The mask was cracking. "Adelaide, come to your father, right now. These people have poisoned your mind. You're confused. You're hysterical." Adelaide stood up, Ruthie in one arm, Eliza in the other. She turned to face her father, and the people of Elkhorn Creek saw something happen that they'd never seen before. Adelaide Prescott stood her ground. "I'm not confused," she said. Her voice trembled, but it held. "I'm not hysterical. And I'm not coming to you. Not now, not ever again." Prescott took a step forward. His face darkened. "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying." Adelaide's voice got stronger with every word. "You told me my babies were dead. You made me grieve for children you tried to murder. You showed me graves and watched me weep, and you knew they were empty." Prescott looked at the crowd, looked at the faces watching him. For 30 years, these people had feared him, obeyed him, looked away when he did terrible things. He expected that to hold. "This is a family matter," Prescott said. "It doesn't concern anyone else. It concerned me when I found 2 children dying in the snow." Jesse climbed down from the wagon. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the cold air like a blade. A 4-year-old girl, standing barefoot in a blizzard, holding her baby sister, trying to keep her alive. "That concerned me, Prescott. You had no right to interfere." "I had every right. They were dying because of you." Dr. Cole pushed through the crowd. His face was gray with shame, but he was moving forward. And for a man who'd spent years moving backward, that meant something. "I have something to say," Cole said. His voice shook. "Marshal Prescott forced me to sign death certificates for 2 living children. He threatened my family if I refused. I signed them, and I've hated myself every day since." He held up a folded paper. "This is my sworn statement. Everything I know about what Prescott did." Prescott's composure cracked. Henry. His voice was dangerous. Think very carefully about what you're doing. I've been thinking about it for weeks. That's the problem. I should have done this the day you asked me to lie. A murmur ran through the crowd. People shifting, looking at each other. The fear that had held them silent for decades, beginning to loosen. Elena Vasquez stepped forward from behind Clara. She was shaking, her hands clasped in front of her, but her chin was lifted. "I work in the Prescott house," she said. "For 15 years I have worked there. I have seen what he does to his daughter. I have heard him plan to kill these babies. I heard him say the words. He said they were better off dead than bringing shame to his name." Prescott spun toward her. "You're fired. You're a liar and you're fired, and if you say another word, I'll have you deported." "I am an American citizen, Mr. Prescott." Elena's voice didn't waver. "And I am done being afraid of you." Frank Harlan stepped out of the crowd. He still wore his deputy's badge, but he looked like a different man than the one who'd stood on Jesse's porch with a warrant. "I'd like to add something," Harlan said. He looked at Prescott. 3 days ago, I was ordered to search the Thornton property for these children. I found them." He let that sink in. "I found them, and I walked away, because I couldn't bring myself to hand 2 babies over to a man who wanted them dead." Prescott's face went from red to white. His hands were clenched at his sides. The silver-haired patriarch, the man who'd controlled every aspect of life in Elkhorn Creek for 3 decades, was watching his world collapse one witness at a time. "You're all going to regret this," Prescott said. "Every single one of you. I built this town. I own the bank. I hold the mortgages on half your homes. You think you can stand against me and survive?" Silence. Then a voice from the back of the crowd. Old Martha Perkins, of all people. "You don't own me, Wade." "My house is paid for, and my conscience is clean, which is more than you can say." Another voice, Tom Fletcher, the blacksmith. "You've been squeezing this town for years, taking land that wasn't yours, charging interest that wasn't legal. I reckon it's time that stopped." Then another, and another. One by one, the people of Elkhorn Creek found their voices. 30 years of silence cracking open like ice in spring. Not everyone, not all at once, but enough. Prescott looked at them, looked at his daughter holding her children, looked at Thomas Callahan, the boy he'd driven away, standing tall and unafraid. Looked at Jesse Thornton, the broken cowboy who should have been easy to destroy, but somehow wasn't. And for the first time in anyone's memory, Wade Prescott had nothing to say. "This is over," Jesse said. He stepped forward. The crowd parted for him, not out of fear, out of respect. "You're done, Prescott. Done controlling your daughter. Done threatening this town. Done hurting children." "You can't arrest me," Prescott sneered, but the sneer had lost its teeth. "I'm the law in this county." "No, sir, you're not." A new voice. Everyone turned. A man on horseback at the edge of the crowd, gray-bearded, weathered, wearing a federal marshal's badge that caught the winter sun. "Name's Walter Briggs," the man said, dismounting. "Federal marshal out of Cheyenne. Judge Amos Whitaker sent me." He held up a folded document. "I've got a warrant for the arrest of Wade Prescott on charges of conspiracy to commit murder, falsification of legal documents, coercion, and abuse of judicial authority." The crowd erupted. Prescott tried to run. He turned and made it 3 steps before Harlan caught his arm. "Wade Prescott," Harlan said, and there was something almost peaceful in his voice. "You're under arrest." "You can't do this to me!" Prescott was struggling now, his dignity gone, his power stripped away. "I am Wade Prescott. I built this town. I made all of you." "You're nothing without me." "We were always something." Jesse's voice cut through the noise. "You just made us forget." The federal marshal took custody of Prescott. 2 more deputies appeared, men who'd ridden with Briggs from Cheyenne. They put Prescott in his own carriage and drove him away. The last anyone in Elkhorn Creek saw of Marshal Wade Prescott was his face in the carriage window, white and furious and utterly, finally, powerless. Adelaide watched her father leave. She didn't cry. She didn't cheer. She just stood there, holding her daughters and breathing like a woman who'd been underwater for 22 years and had finally broken the surface. Thomas put his arm around her. "You're free," he said. Adelaide leaned against him. "I don't know what that means yet." "You'll learn. We'll learn together." Ruthie tugged on Adelaide's dress. "Mama?" "Yes, baby." "Can we go home now?" Adelaide looked at Thomas, then at Jessie and Clara. "Where is home?" she asked. Jessie and Clara exchanged a look, the kind of look that carries a whole conversation in a single glance. Clara spoke first. "You're welcome at the ranch, all of you, for as long as you need." Adelaide's eyes filled. "You don't even know me." "I know your daughter," Clara said. "She's the bravest person I've ever met. So I reckon I know everything I need to know about her mother." They went to the ranch together, all of them. The wagon was crowded and the road was covered in snow, and baby Eliza cried most of the way because she was hungry. Ruthie sat in Adelaide's lap, pressed close, not willing to let her mother out of reach for even a second. At the ranch, Clara heated milk for Eliza, while Adelaide sat in Jessie's chair by the fire and held her daughters and let herself believe it was real. Thomas knelt beside her. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm sorry I left. I'm sorry I wasn't there." "You're here now." Adelaide touched his face. "That's what matters." Jessie stood by the window, his window, the place he'd spent 6 years watching the world go by without him. Clara came and stood beside him. "You're doing it again," she said, watching from the outside. "Habit. Bad habit." Clara took his arm. "Come, sit down. Be part of it. They don't need me hovering. They're a family. They need time to—" "Papa Jesse." Ruthie's voice stopped him. She was looking at him from Adelaide's lap with those blue eyes that saw everything. "Come sit with us. There's room." Jessie looked at Clara. Clara smiled. The smile he'd seen through gunfire and blizzards and fear, and somehow it was still the warmest thing he'd ever known. He sat down. Ruthie immediately climbed from Adelaide's lap into his. She settled against his chest and took his hand and put it on top of her mother's hand. "There," Ruthie said with satisfaction. "Now everybody's touching. That's how families work." Adelaide laughed. It was the first time she'd laughed in months, maybe years, and the sound of it filled the cabin the way sunlight fills a room when you open the curtains. That night, after the children were asleep and Adelaide and Thomas had retreated to the spare room Clara had made up, Jesse sat on the porch in the cold. His rifle was beside him, force of habit. But the night was quiet, truly quiet, for the first time since he'd found those girls in the snow. Clara came out with 2 cups of coffee. She sat beside him and handed him one. "You should sleep," she said. "Can't. Too much in my head." "Good too much or bad too much?" Jesse thought about it. "Both." He took a sip of coffee. "I keep thinking about what happens next. Prescott's gone, but there's going to be trials, legal battles. Adelaide's going to need help sorting out the estate. Thomas has nothing. Those children need stability. They have stability." Clara's voice was quiet. "They have you." Jesse stared at his coffee. "Clara, when this all shakes out, Thomas and Adelaide are going to build their own life, their own home. take their children, and make a family. That's how it should be. And where does that leave us? Jesse turned to look at her. Us? Clara met his eyes without flinching. Don't play dumb, Jesse Thornton. It doesn't suit you. Jesse almost laughed. It came out as a rough sound, rusty from 6 years of not being used. I'm a 43-year-old rancher with a bullet-riddled cabin and more grief than any woman should have to take on. And I'm a 36-year-old schoolteacher who can't have children and spent the last 3 years convinced she'd never feel alive again. Clara set down her coffee. We're a match set, you and me. Jesse was quiet for a long time. The stars were out. The snow glittered under a half moon. I love you, he said. He said it the way he said everything. Plain, direct, without decoration. I don't know when it happened. Somewhere between you walking through my door and you picking up that pistol and telling 5 armed men they couldn't have our children. But it happened, and I can't undo it, and I don't want to. Clara's eyes were shining. Then don't. She leaned into him, and Jesse put his arm around her, and they sat together in the cold, watching the sky. I want to ask you something, Jesse said. And you can say no. You probably should say no. Try me. Stay. Not for the girls, not because they need you. Stay for me. Stay because I need you. Because this house hasn't been a home in 6 years, and the moment you walked in, it was. Stay because I'm terrified of going back to who I was before, and you're the only person who makes me believe I don't have to. Clara was quiet. Jesse counted his heartbeats. 5, 10, 15. Jesse Thornton, Clara said. I've been staying since the first night. I just needed you to ask. 3 months later, on the first warm day of spring, the church in Elkhorn Creek was full. Not for Sunday service, for a wedding. 2 weddings, actually. Thomas and Adelaide went first. She wore a simple white dress that Elena had sewn for her. He wore a borrowed suit that was slightly too big in the shoulders. Adelaide cried through the whole ceremony. Thomas didn't cry until Adelaide said, I do, and then he fell apart completely. Jesse and Clara went second. Jesse tugged at his collar the entire time. Clara held wildflowers that Ruthie had picked that morning. The bouquet was mostly dandelions and one confused daisy, but Clara held it like it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever received. Ruthie served as flower girl for both ceremonies. She took the job seriously, marching down the aisle with great concentration, dropping petals in precise intervals. Baby Eliza watched from Dr. Cole's arms, chewing on her fist and looking deeply unimpressed by the whole affair. When the preacher asked if anyone objected to Jesse and Clara's union, Ruthie shouted no, so loud that the back pews heard it, and the whole church laughed, the same way they'd laughed in a different story, in a different town, because some things are universal. I now pronounce you husband and wife. Jesse kissed Clara, and Ruthie cheered, and Eliza burped, and the people of Elkhorn Creek, who'd spent 30 years under one man's shadow, celebrated in the sunlight like people who'd remembered what freedom tasted like. At the reception, Frank Harlan told Jesse that Prescott's trial was set for June, federal court in Cheyenne. The evidence was overwhelming. Dr. Cole's statement, Elena's testimony, the man Prescott had paid to abandon the children, found drunk in a saloon in Colorado, had confessed everything. He's done, Harlan said. 20 years at least, probably more. Good. Jesse watched Ruthie dancing with Thomas, her small feet standing on his boots while he waltzed her around the room. That's good. Adelaide came to find Jesse later that evening. She was glowing in a way that made her almost unrecognizable
from the broken woman he'd first seen coming down the hill. "Mr. Thornton," she took both his hands. "I've been trying to find the words to thank you, and I can't. There aren't words big enough for what you did." "You don't need to thank me." "Yes, I do." Adelaide squeezed his hands. "You saved my children. You gave them a home when I couldn't. You taught Ruthie what it means to have a father who stays." "She told me, you know. She told me everything. How you held her in the snow, how you called yourself Papa Jesse, how you let her name the baby after your daughter." Jesse's throat tightened. "Eliza," Adelaide said softly, "my daughter carries your daughter's name. And every time I say it, every time I call her, I want you to know that I'm remembering. I'm honoring the little girl you lost. And I'm thanking you for loving mine when I couldn't be there to do it myself." Jesse couldn't speak. He just nodded and held her hands and let that be enough. 1 year later, the Thornton Ranch had changed. Not the land. The land was the same, rolling prairie giving way to foothills, the creek running clear after the spring melt. But the house was bigger now. Jesse and Thomas had added 2 rooms in the summer. One for Thomas and Adelaide, one that served as a schoolroom where Clara taught not just Ruthie, but 5 other children from neighboring ranches. Eliza was walking now, toddling through the house on unsteady legs, with the fierce determination of a child who'd survived something impossible before she was old enough to know it. She called Jesse Papa, and Clara Mama, and Thomas Daddy, and Adelaide Mommy. And if anyone found it confusing that one child had 4 parents who loved her, nobody said so. Ruthie was 5. She'd lost some of the old look in her eyes, the wariness, the watchfulness of a child who'd learned too young that adults couldn't be trusted. It came back sometimes, in flashes, when a door slammed too loud, or a stranger's voice was too sharp. But it came less often now, and when it came, there was always someone there to hold her until it passed. "Tell the story, Papa Jesse," Ruthie said one evening. They were on the porch, all of them. Jesse in his chair, Clara beside him, her hand resting on the gentle curve of her belly, 4 months along with a baby that Dr. Cole said was growing strong and healthy. A miracle, he'd called it, for a woman who'd been told she could never conceive. Clara called it something else. She called it grace. Thomas and Adelaide sat on the steps, Eliza asleep in Adelaide's arms. The sun was setting over the mountains, and the sky was doing that thing it did in Wyoming, turning colors that no painter could capture and no words could describe. "Tell the story," Ruthie said again. "The one about the snow. You know that story by heart, little one. Tell it anyway." Jesse smiled. He looked at Clara, who nodded, at Thomas and Adelaide, who were listening, at Eliza, dreaming in her mother's arms, at Ruthie, this fierce, extraordinary child who'd stood barefoot in a blizzard and refused to let the world win. "Once upon a time," Jesse began, "there was a cowboy who thought his heart was dead. He lived alone, worked alone, and he figured that was how it would be until the end. Then one winter night, in the worst storm he'd ever seen, he heard a sound that changed everything." "What sound?" Ruthie whispered, even though she knew. A little girl's voice, brave and scared and strong all at the same time. And when that cowboy found her, standing in the snow, holding her baby sister, refusing to give up, he realized something he'd forgotten. What did he realize? That love doesn't die. It just waits. Sometimes it waits in the last place you'd ever think to look. In a blizzard, in a broken wagon, in the arms of a 4-year-old girl who was braver than any grown man he'd ever known. Ruthie climbed into his lap. She was getting big for it, all legs and elbows, but neither of them cared. "I love you, Papa Jesse." "I love you too, little one, always and forever." The sun went down, the stars came out, and on a ranch in Wyoming,
A family sat together in the quiet of evening, bound not by blood or obligation, but by choice, by sacrifice, by the stubborn, unbreakable, impossible love that happens when broken people decide to stop being broken alone and start being whole together. Ruthie fell asleep in Jessie's arms. Eliza dreamed in Adelaide's. Clara leaned her head against Jessie's shoulder, her hand on the new life growing inside her, and closed her eyes. And Jesse Thornton, the man who'd spent 6 years believing he had nothing left to live for, held his family close and understood at last what he'd been waiting for all along. Not a second chance, a first one. The first real chance to become the man he was always meant to be. A man who stayed, a man who fought, a man who loved without condition and without fear and without end. The snow would come again. The winters in Wyoming always did. But this time, when the cold came, it would find the cabin warm, the fire lit, and the door open to anyone who needed shelter. Because that's what families do. They keep the fire burning, they leave the light on, and they never, ever let go.
Thank you, truly, for staying with this story, for giving your time, your quiet attention, and a small place in your heart to the people who walked through it. Stories like this ask us for something simple but rare, a moment of stillness. And if you've listened all the way to the end, then you've already given that gift. Sometimes the world moves so quickly that we forget how powerful a single moment can be. Not the grand moments that history books record, but the small ones, the kind that arrive quietly, in the middle of an ordinary day, or on a cold night when no one else is watching. A man riding home, a child standing alone in the wind, a choice that could have gone either way. Life often turns on moments just like that. What stays with me about this story isn't only the hardship, or the cold, or the loneliness that shaped the lives of the people inside it. Those things are part of life, and they always have been. What lingers longer is something softer, something almost easy to overlook. It's the way one human being can decide, in a single breath, that another life matters. Not because it is convenient, not because it is easy, but simply because it is right. And when that decision is made, something subtle begins to change. Not all at once, not in dramatic ways that the world applauds, but slowly, quietly, like warmth returning to frozen hands. Compassion has a strange way of working like that. It rarely arrives with noise. It doesn't demand attention. Often it looks like nothing more than patience, or a door held open, or a hand extended to someone who thought no one would come. Yet those small acts ripple outward through lives we may never fully see. A child who was frightened learns that the world is not entirely cruel. A heart that had grown tired discovers that it is still capable of caring. A future that once looked empty begins to hold the faint outline of possibility. And that's something worth remembering, because many of us walk through our own days carrying quiet burdens. Some of them are visible, many are not. We meet strangers every day, whose stories we will never know, people who may be standing, in their own way, in a kind of storm. Most of the time we pass one another without realizing it, but every now and then, a moment appears, a pause, a chance to decide what kind of person we will be in that instant. The truth is, none of us can change the entire world. That has never been within the reach of any one person. But what we can do, what has always been possible, is to change the direction of a single life. Sometimes, even our own. And often, it begins with something as simple as refusing to walk past suffering when we see it. There is also something else hidden quietly inside this story. Patience. The kind that grows slowly over time. Life rarely reshapes itself overnight. Healing does not arrive the moment kindness is offered. Wounds, whether they belong to the body or the heart, tend to close in their own time. But when compassion is present, Patience becomes easier to carry. Little by little, the world softens. A house that once felt empty begins to hold voices again. Silence gives way to small laughter. Hope, which may have been buried for years, finds a way to breathe. And that may be one of the most remarkable things about hope. It doesn't require perfect conditions to grow. Hope can appear in the middle of winter. It can survive in places that have known great loss. Sometimes it arrives in the form of another human being who simply refuses to turn away. If you think about it, that may be one of the quiet miracles of being alive alongside other people. Our lives overlap in ways we rarely understand. A decision made on one cold afternoon can echo across decades. A moment of mercy can become the foundation for someone else's entire future. And often the person who offered that kindness never fully sees the extent of what they've changed. But that doesn't make it any less real. In fact, it might make it even more beautiful, because it reminds us that goodness does not need recognition to exist. It simply needs someone willing to act. And maybe that's where this story leaves us tonight, not with a tidy lesson, but with a gentle invitation. An invitation to look at the moments that appear in our own lives, the small crossroads, the quiet choices, to remember that patience has power, that compassion is never wasted, that even a life weighed down by years of silence can begin again in ways we never expected. None of us know when we might become the turning point in someone else's story, or when someone else might become the turning point in ours. So perhaps the best thing we can do is move through the world with a little more openness, a little more kindness, and a willingness to pause when another person's need crosses our path. Because sometimes the difference between despair and hope is nothing more than one person who decided to stay. And if tonight's story leaves you with anything at all, maybe it is simply this quiet thought. Somewhere, at this very moment, a life may be waiting for the warmth of a single human choice. And the remarkable thing is, you never know when that choice might be yours.